Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And one more. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And one more. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One more. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. One more. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One more. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One more. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And done. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. 1, 2, 3. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, let I go, Hare Bol. Jai Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Jai Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Jai Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premananda Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram. Thank you very much. This was really sweet. Very nice. Put the top one here. Wonderful. Yeah. Good. So, yeah, 35. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Third canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 24, text 37. Huh? Prabhupada could swallow 3-4 times, when you would pour water. You would just swallow, chuk, chuk, chuk. Schluck, it's called a schluck in German. 3 schlucks, at least, if not 4 schlucks. Schluck, what a word. Etan me janma lokesmin. Etan me janma lokesmin. Mumukshunam durashayat. Mumukshunam durashayat. Prasankyanaya tadvanam. Samattayatma darshane. Samattayatma darshane. Ite me janma lokesmin. Itan me janma lokesmin. Mumukshunam durashayat. Prasankyanaya tatvanam. Samatayat madashane. Itan me janma lokesmin. Mumukshunam durasayat. Prasankyanaya tatvanam. Satam. Etat, this, me, my, janma, birth, loke, in the world, asmin, in this, mumukshunam, by those great sages seeking liberation, durasayat, from unnecessary material desires. Prasankyanaya, for explaining, Tadvanam, of the truth, Sumataya, which is highly esteemed, Atmadarshane, in self-realization. Translation. My appearance in this world, by Srila Prabhupada, translation, my appearance in this world is especially to explain the philosophy of Sankhya, which is highly esteemed for self-realization by those desiring freedom from the entanglement of unnecessary material desires. Here the word durashayat is very significant. Dur refers to trouble or dukkha, miseries. Asayat means from the shelter. We conditioned souls have taken shelter of material body, which is full of troubles and miseries. Foolish people cannot understand the situation, and this is called ignorance, illusion or spell of Maya. Human society should very seriously understand that the body itself is a source of miserable life. Modern civilization is supposed to be making advancement in scientific knowledge. But what is this scientific knowledge? It is based on bodily comforts only, without knowledge that however comfortable one maintains this body, the body is destructible. Stated in Bhagavad Gita, Antavanta ime deha, these bodies are destined to be destroyed. Nitya yoktaha sadinaha refers to the living soul or the living spark within the body. That soul is eternal, but the soul is not eternal. The soul is eternal, but the body is not eternal. For our activity, we must have a body. Without sense organs, there's no activity. But people are not inquiring whether it is possible to have an eternal body. Actually, they aspire for an eternal body because even though they engage in sense enjoyment, the sense enjoyment is not eternal. They are therefore in want of something which they can enjoy eternally, but they do not understand how to attain the perfection, Sankhya Yoga, Sankhya philosophy. Therefore, it is stated here by Kapila Dev, it is Tat Tvanam. The Sankhya philosophy system is designed to afford understanding of the real truth. What is the real truth? The real truth is knowledge of how to get out of this material body, which is the source of all trouble. Lord Kapila's incarnation or descent is especially meant for this purpose, as clearly stated here. Omagyan Timidandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshurmi Tamina Tasmai Sigurabhi Namaha Sititanya Manobishtam Stapitamina Bhutare Swayam Rupa Akadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasri Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram. So, it is a very significant verse because it says here, like every verse is significant in its own way, and it says here that this verse is highly esteemed by those who desire freedom from the entanglement of unnecessary material life. So, most people, as it says in what is this noise? So most people in material existence is that they are, how do you say, bewildered. Bewildered souls loitering in the material world, like hippies. Actually, the material world is full of hippies. This is the actual place of hippies, where everybody just tries to enjoy it. Hip means to be happy. Actually, the word hippies, comes from the Chinese people. Chinese people is in Chinese, it says somebody who lies on the hip. On the hip. And what is hip means? That he is taking opium all day and he's lying on the hip. You know, he's not getting up, he's in paradise, right? He's lying on the hip. Therefore, the word hippies. And to be hip means to be happy, you know. That's the conception. So people don't know that the self they are thinking to be is an illusion. It is a temporary manifestation featured by Maya. That's all. It's a temporary, and you can see it's temporary. It's in the beginning it's beautiful, in the middle it's okay, in the end it's ugly. The older people get, except Prabhupada, he was beauty in his old age, and so many of his godbrothers and his sister, for example. Anybody has seen a picture of sister of Prabhupada? Lift your hand. I showed it yesterday. You know, she looks just like Prabhupada. Just like a female version of Srila Prabhupada. Same age, same everything, same face, same lips, same everything. Just Google. What was her name? Huh? Pishima. Just Google and you see Prabhupada's face and his sister. It's very wonderful. So, Nate vidu svatagatim Vishnu. People don't know that God is the goal of life. That is a fact. They don't know. Pavitim cha nivitim cha, they don't know where they're coming from. There is a song by one of our Jet, let me see. Jet, yes. There is a song by a contemporary rock and roll group in the 60s. They were kind of, how do you say, thinking a little bit. And they say to the world, you try so hard to be someone because you forget who you are, right? It's very wonderful, you know, you tried so hard to be someone, you know, someone else, basically speaking, because you have forgot who you are. You try to fill your emptiness with something material. It's something that ultimately spills over, like a glass that spills over. And then he said, when it's so hard to be yourself, it's not to become somebody else, right? That's not, you have to just stay there. I'm here now, it's hard to be myself, namely, to be this person in this body, and facing the challenge of the body. You know, as a child, you face so many pains. I remember when I was a little boy, our neighbor had a dog. I had also a dog, very beautiful, simple, small dog, very friendly. And so he had children, that dog. And he was lying in his house, and I stick my head in there. And she became so angry, she bit into my cheek, you know, very strongly. And the doctor had to put the piece back. I don't know if one can still see that. You know, he pulled, and it was so painful. And stitched, you know, it had to be stitched. Well, he didn't have anesthesia for one reason. This is 1950 or something, you know. It's stitched, you know, very painful. So I wanted pleasure, and I got the result of it, you know. She was worried about her children, you know. When a woman is worried about her children, she can do anything, you know. There's Indra Dumna Maharaj told the story that a woman's ball, a child's ball, no, not Indra Dumna, it's on the internet, a child's ball rolled off the property and the child was running after it. And a car came and overrolled it. And he stopped. So the child was in between the car, you know, in the middle of the car, and somehow she was entangled in the car. So the mother ran out and she lifted the car with her own hands up. And somebody pulled the car out. And this is humanly not possible. This is humanly not possible. You know, it's the power of love. You know, but the power of love. That's possible. She got this strength from the super soul. Another story that comes to mind, that Niranjan Swami, he sent one girl to our ashram in Vrindavan to die. She had leukemia. And when she came, she told me, the doctor said about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I have to go, and that's it. And so there was a Russian boy who took care of them. And I realized after some days that he was not just taking care of him, that he had some affection for her. And then I saw them he's sitting on his bed and they were holding hands. And one time I walked in, they exchanged a kiss. And then one day I walked in, she was smiling, she said, "I'm going back to Russia." She said, "Out of your mind, you're here, and this is your final station." He said, "No, I feel completely healthy. And in fact, we want to get married. We wanted to tell you that we want to get married." And I couldn't believe it, you know. And then it turned out that they went to Russia and got married, and they had children. And the doctor couldn't find a trace of the disease, the leukemia in his body. That's what the Beatles sing, "All you need is love." All you need is love. In preaching also. You have to have a capacity to love people. That's very important. Then it sets the ground for exchange, you know, for exchange of knowledge, or any type of exchange. And so, if you want to exchange our thoughts, for example, you need to expand your how do you say, your contact area. And I'll give you a practical example. If you want to heat this room, you need a large amount of radiators. If you run simply just a single pipe through this room, it will not make a difference. But if you expand the same part you expand the contact area, you know, then exchange becomes possible. And so in the same way, when people want to exchange feelings, any types of feeling, even erotic feelings, they how do you say, increase the contact area. Ultimately, they take their clothes off. That's what it is, to increase the contact area. That's all. So I'm telling you that because this movement suffers one thing. Since the beginning, our contact area is not expanded enough. You know, we have to be everywhere. If there's like in Ireland, I actually had made friendship with environmentalists, with all kinds of people, and preached there, because they are already somewhere on the way away from the status quo. Anybody is away from, you can preach. You find that there is a huge amount of potential that we cannot touch right now. We have to, just like the Bible is just one book, but there are thousands and thousands and thousands of books written about the Bible by believers, and in this way expanding the contact area of a small book. You can have one verse from Bhagavad Gita and expand this so that it can be understood by thousands of people. You can, the word prasadam, you can expand unlimitedly by feeding people till it comes out of their ears, practically speaking, and they become devotees. How many people ask a question to you? How did you come to the movement? What was where was prasadam a factor in you becoming devotees? He lifts two hands. It's a fact. In my life, in the beginning, there was a sweet ball. There was a Simply Wonderful. You know how to make them? Huh? No? What? You must do 50% powder sugar, 50% milk powder, and then you have to knead the butter into it till you get a substance that is kneadable, and it makes these balls. Prabhupada, when he ate it the first time, never outside of India, you don't find this recipe. And Prabhupada said, this is Simply Wonderful, and became a Simply Wonderful, known as Simply Wonderful. And the first thing I said when somebody gave me, I said this before, a Simply Wonderful, the person asked me, how do you like it? I said, it's Simply Wonderful. He said, well, that's what we call it. So this program you're doing, preaching in universities or the Zoom, is expanding our contact area. There are many people who don't know about us. So the internet offers great facility to expand the contact area. And so now, how did I get there? After traveling out so far, that that people do not know what is the value of life. That's a fact. They don't know. And loitering in the street, like you see, young people, particularly in Western countries, if you go on a weekend and have Harinam, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of young people. Half of them are Assyrians and Afghani people, because the Germans are working. But these kids are running carefree in the streets, loitering. They don't know what to do. They don't know where they come from. They don't know where they're going to. They don't know where they are. They don't know who they are. This is a situation. It is complete ignorance, like dream walking. Like dream walking, walking in a dream. That is material life, So knowledge has to be given. Knowledge has to be given because people simply do not know. And one second, where are we here? There's my mouse. And therefore people cannot understand because of a lack of knowledge. Lack of knowledge. You see, as soon as you say there's only one life, it betrays that you have no knowledge. And therefore all your conclusions will be wrong. Because it's not based on knowledge. It's based on your fertile mind. It's based on mental speculation. And so the paradigm of thinking that is surrounding us all over the world is mental speculation. It's speculation, that's all it is. I'm a German, what is it? It's mental speculation. I'm a Russian, I'm this, I'm that. It's mental speculation. It has nothing to do with you or me. It is simply a phantasmagoria. A phantasmagoria. You know, and so people live in a dream, in a phantasmagoria, and cannot understand where am I in all of this, you know? As soon as you say that the soul is eternal, well, Christians, Muslims, and Jewish people believe in the eternal afterlife. They believe in an eternal life after. But eternality implies no beginning, no end. It implies that, you know. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that for the soul, there's neither birth nor death. Always having been, does he never cease to be. That's knowledge. Never was a time that I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings. Nor will there be a time that we will cease to be. That is knowledge. But people do not know. However, look in Bhagavad Gita. When one is enlightened by the knowledge by which nations is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. There it is. It's the verse, what is it? Bhagavad Gita, come on. 5:16. That's what it is. If one is enlightened with the knowledge. One time, Prabhupada preached to Allen Ginsberg, a great writer and friend of Prabhupada. Actually, he was the first who chanted Hare Krishna in Western countries. When Prabhupada came, the hippies already knew from Allen Ginsberg, because he would go in a famous author wrote outrageous books. I mean, I read most of them when I was a student. It drove thousands of people out of their homes and out of the university in search of a higher world, different from the materialistic, limited, nasty, and destructive way of thinking we were brought up in. It was such a surge of humanity that fled the materialistic concept of modern society at that time, and he was at the crest of it, writing his book Howl, for example, or On the Road Again. And so people, they got on the road because of it, you know. And Prabhupada explained to him, Allen Ginsberg, I had questions about Christianity, how that fits in, and Jesus. And Prabhupada said this sentence, that if you love Jesus, you must, if you know Jesus, if you understand Jesus, you understand Krishna. If you understand Krishna, you understand Jesus. If you love Jesus, you must love Krishna, because he's the Father. Jesus said you should love your Father, and when you love your Father, Jesus, and you love Jesus. And then he said, but if you say to me that I want to love only Jesus, that means you have no knowledge. That's the point. That means you have no knowledge. You see? If you tell me that there's only one life, that means you have no knowledge. If you say there's no existence of the soul before this body, you may be a great, famous philosopher in thinking, these towers of thinking, of philosophy, who wrote large amounts of books, like Thomas of Aquino, for example, Augustine, and all these thinkers, they cannot understand who they are. They cannot, and Augustine had a boyfriend before he became a saint. And it was not an okay relationship. It was, it had gone beyond. And anyway, when his boyfriend died, he came to the conclusion that half of his soul has died, because they were one soul. His philosophy, we have one soul, and it's both of us. We live in this same soul. So a complete, distorted understanding of soul. And when that other part died, then he was in a shock. He said, half of myself has died, and became deeply depressed. which is a good thing sometimes, because then people start thinking, you see. So, yes, he had a history, and he speaks about it in his Confessions. There's a book, Confessions, very interesting book, where he talks about his failures. Like yesterday I said, every human being is a mixture of glory and failure, as Prabhupada explains in the purport of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yes, he had, but then it is true that every saint has a history, as Oscar Wilde said, and every sinner has a future. It's a very great sentence, actually. Every saint has a history. It didn't become a saint from one day to another. He went through many, many errors and many roadblocks and whatnot, till he finally comes to the position that he can be a saint. It's a process. And so then he came to the conclusion, ultimately, that, or he didn't come to the conclusion, he couldn't come to the conclusion, that ultimately that self that you think you are does not exist. It exists in a relative way, in some way, but not in an absolute sense. In absolute sense, you know. In absolute sense,